due to the podcast, amongst a couple of other things, I received an email on my professional account from YouTube the other day, and they were thanking me for the strides I've taken for the hashtag #MeToo movement. And I read this email, and I've never been more bemused in my life. But I was also sitting there going, I'm pretty sure I've never even used the hashtag, so I don't think I've done anything to contribute to it, but I'm happy to be thanked. So to the good people at YouTube, thank you for recognising the sacrifices I've made. I'm Sergei Bondarchuk, famous Russian film director. No, I'm actually... I know that was chameleon-like. It's because I'm an actor. I'm Henry Holmes, as you probably know from the previous 2 podcasts. If you don't, well, feel free to go back and listen.
I'm Sammy Colburn. I'm a particle physicist.
I'm Sid. I'm a professional astronomer and PhD student.
I'm Daniel. I'm also an unprofessional astronomer and Time Person of the Year 2006.
That's true.
Happy Sunday. My name is Jacque, and I am a professional charity doer.
Whoa, you're dating the podcast. Now they know you record on Sundays.
Well, to be honest, we say things every week that date this podcast. And, you know, I'm getting closer and closer to giving away my actual address every week as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't just, drawn a map out for anyone who wants to come to your house yet.
I refrained in last week's podcast from providing a picture of my garden because I did think maybe about putting a picture of the gardens outside Hampton Court Palace or something for a laugh, but I refrained from doing that.
Just the gardens of Versailles, you know?
Oh, yes. Do you know when they were originally constructed, because they're so full of fountains, but it's so far from the River Seine and they had to divert a lot of the water down towards Versailles. They couldn't get sufficient water pressure to keep all the fountains running at the same time. So they would have lots of runners around the garden going, the king is coming, turn the fountain on. So they turn the fountain on while they turn the one that's behind him off. And they have to play this elaborate game so that the illusion is maintained for His Majesty Louis XIV, the Sun King, that all his fountains can in fact be run at the same time when they couldn't.
You see, I went to Versailles. It's pretty nice. But me and my girlfriend were trying to avoid throwing up the whole time while we were there, so it kind of put a damper on the whole
You're not a fan of Rococo architecture?
No, it was disgusting. I mean that, and it's just my natural response to the bourgeois, you know?
Well, it's not even bourgeois, is it, at that point? Because the bourgeois are the tier below. It reminds me of my favourite card in Cards Against Humanity, which is one of the white cards, and it has the petty troubles of the landed gentry. And it is my favourite in combination with the black card that says, help, I can't go to sleep, I'm having nightmares because of, then, you know, the petty troubles of the landed gentry. And I just really enjoy that, combination.
I was watching the TV earlier today. It's interesting. It was about Christianity in the modern age and how people are trying to talk about feminism in correlation to it. So they were doing a service where they were referring to God as a she. And it made me realize, why don't we refer to the Christian God as they? Because it works on all counts. First of all, as a singular, non-gendered pronoun, and as the other count, as a plural pronoun, because it is both 1 and 3. So, it's the perfect pronoun for God, and yet we don't use it.
But, you know, according to the classic idea of the Trinity, it's 3 blokes. But, but that's also, you know, later Catholic theology rather than stuff you find in the Bible. But talking of stuff you find in the Bible, actually, this is related, because I heard this earlier this week. It's a quote from Mark, so one of the New Testament Gospels. Because, you know, we traditionally think of Jesus as, you know, the ultimate kind figure. But this is a quote about the poor. So it says, "The poor, they will always be with you. I will not always be with you." And this is Jesus. And he says this as a rebuke to his disciples. They're going on to this woman who's paid 200 denarii for this oil to anoint Jesus's body. They're going, you could have spent that money on helping the poor. And Jesus goes, no. The poor, they will always be with you. I will not always be with you. And you go, For the Son of God and the Messiah, slightly egocentric.
Sid, I noticed you posted the original meme lord, Richard Dawkins.
Yeah, I've watched a Lex Friedman interview with Richard Dawkins recently.
Lex Friedman, I'm not aware. How was the interview?
Pretty good. It's very neutral when Lex Friedman interviews people, and lots of insightful ideas are brought out, and he really knows how to ask questions that make for interesting discussion while not being antagonizing.
Huh, we should really learn that skill.
Are you saying there are better discussions to listen to out there other than
I doubt it.
Well, if you want an informed discussion.
Don't worry, we're the top tier of uninformed discussion podcast. So my question is, does coronavirus spell the death of the cinema? Specifically, I say the cinema, not cinema, the art form. I think movies will still survive, but the cinema as in the movie theatres.
An interesting place to start with this question would be, what's the current state of the cinema? I mean, it's already suffering, right?
The commercial cinema is in decline, but art house cinema is actually doing very well. Or it was doing very well just prior to coronavirus. It's doing the best it's been doing for years and years and years. But I was thinking the other day that because I saw the World Health Organization's announcement about the coronavirus in Africa and how it's possibly going to stick around for years and years and years. And I was thinking we might end up returning to a state similar to the waves of bubonic plague. I mean, with obviously a lower death toll and a better understanding of how to control and manage the disease. But I was thinking that perhaps it might become a thing that is periodic over the next few years for public spaces like theatres, cinemas and things to just close for a few months, reopen, another wave, close for a few months, like they did in the Elizabethan period.
I mean, plagues do come in waves. Like, Spanish flu had 2 waves, with the second being way more deadly.
Yeah, and that's something I keep seeing people pointing to at the moment, and they're going, no, don't reopen. You don't understand. If we reopen now, we are potentially opening ourselves up to a far, far more serious disaster.
Even if we do reopen, we have to be ready to immediately start closing again.
But can the cinema really survive if we close it in waves and reopen it?
Yeah, but speaking of the Spanish flu, cinema survived the Spanish flu. Cinema was in its infancy back then, and it still survived. And also survived 2 world wars and a Great Depression.
But if it was in its infancy, does that also help because of its novelty? Whereas now we have Netflix.
Well, the First World War actually did wonders for the American cinema, particularly, because before that, cinema was dominated by Germany, Italy, Britain, France, in sort of the Belle Epoque era, late 19th into early 20th century prior to the First World War. But then, people weren't making films in Europe during the First World War, so it gave Hollywood an opportunity to break into that market.
Going back to what Sid said about streaming services and stuff, that's like the major difference compared to like the Great Depression or the World Wars, is because there's active competition from streaming services, and several movie companies have started just releasing their new movies straight onto streaming services. Like, I think it's Trolls World Tour is the first ever movie to get a full, or first big budget movie that would have gone into cinema to get a full digital release.
And that's an instant classic as well, Trolls World Tour, I mean.
Well, it was the number 1 selling movie on Amazon when it came out, and it's the most pre-ordered movie on Amazon of all time. So there's clearly a market for it.
Okay, so the real question is, should cinema die? Because if people are going to be watching Trolls World Tour, I think the answer might be yes.
Well, that's a different question.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, that's the classic difference between art and entertainment, which is the constant dichotomy of the performing arts. Well, I've been involved with lots of things that people would go, well, that's not particularly high art, but it is entertaining. And ultimately, that is the question that people grapple with, because I think a lot of actors like myself do want to be involved with things that we can look back on and we go, oh, we created art there. That was a solid piece of art. But sometimes I do think that you have to accept anybody in the theatre or the cinema or any of those industries, that your job ultimately is to entertain an audience. And if you're not achieving that, doesn't matter how good the art is you're creating. Whereas if Trolls World Tour is entertaining people, it has fulfilled its remit. The art is sort of, I think, an added bonus.
To bring back to cinema, though, Do you think streaming services would ever completely take over from the cinema? Because I would argue no, because I think there's something very different about a cinema experience. In the same way that
I would agree with you.
Some films do better on, say, VHS than they do in big cinema releases.
Classic timely reference, VHS.
VHS.
I would be inclined to agree with you, Sammy, just because part of what people pay for when they go to the cinema is, in inverted commas, the experience.
Yes, yeah.
And it's like going to see live theatre in that respect. You know, it's part of the contract you've entered into. And it is, if people obeyed sort of the etiquette of that kind of environment, I do think it is a better way to experience film.
Certainly certain films, right? Like, do you want to see Star Wars on the big screen with, like, you know, everything coming out, you know, all the sound, that whole experience? Or do you want to watch it, you know, like, on, like, a small CRT in your mum's basement? You know.
Why is your technology so outdated, Sam?
What are you talking about? VHS tapes of Star Wars on CRT TV is the cutting edge of technology.
Well, you know, at least it's VHS and not Betamax or something.
Whoa, I have both, you know, because I think Betamax is going to pick up, guys. It's going to take over.
But that's the thing about, like, the cinema. That's the part of the experience, right? The big screen, the tech, but also all the 3D films. You can't have that experience, or even like IMAX, you don't have that experience at home. But maybe with VR, you will.
Yeah, but 3D has been losing popularity dramatically.
I mean, 3D isn't a new trend either, right?
No. Yeah, you had 3D in the 50s, and then in the 80s, and then again in the 2000s and 10s.
I mean, it's gonna pick up just like Betamax. I'm telling you guys.
Well, you know, I feel like this question is unanswerable using the information we currently have, right? Analyzing business trends and markets, that's a really complicated problem, which consultants spend a lot of time and people pay a lot of money to do, right? So if you were to answer this question properly, you do a company analysis. Well, I guess that doesn't really make too much sense here, but you would look at the competition, the consumers, seeing what current trends are and what they actually want from this product. And you would also look at a product analysis and see what comes out, right?
I think it's more complicated than just that, though, because the cinema isn't a product.
The cinema, if you think about it, is like a shop. The shop doesn't produce food. A farm produces food, and then you buy your food from a shop. And the cinema is much the same. So it's essentially a middleman. It is a means of experiencing something in the same way as a streaming services or a VHS in Sammy's case. In fact, Netflix did start as a VHS delivery service.
It did, yeah. Well, VHS and DVDs.
It was a mail order service.
Yeah, it was a mail order rental service.
I mean, my money's in Redbox.
No, my money's in Blockbuster.
Imagine working in Blockbuster in those heady days and going, Netflix, these bunch of fools thinking to supplant us.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is, like, Blockbuster was also another thing, you know, like home video in general was another thing where they were like, this is going to kill cinema. And it didn't.
No, but it severely depleted the amount of people who went to cinema.
It's a different audience, right? Like, people don't want to watch, I don't know. Well, one thing that home video pretty much immediately killed was porn, right? Porn theaters, you know, like, obviously porn you don't want to watch that in a cinema. Does that
exist?
Yeah, they used to have cinemas for porn.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds really weird.
Imagine watching porn communally.
Oh my god. I feel like something really interesting to consider is that our current model of cinema right now is just a medium of getting film to you, right? And certain channels of getting film to you have died before, right? So, for example, Blockbuster, no one uses mail order films no more. Also, drive-in cinemas, no, that just doesn't exist anymore, right?
They're making a comeback, actually, with the coronavirus. Drive-in theatres.
Really?
Yeah.
You can stay isolated in your car.
That sounds great, actually.
I think I read that somewhere, that yeah.
I think you're right. I did see something to that effect recently.
But I mean, drive-in theatres aren't really a thing here.
Where's here?
The UK.
I was thinking more about medium and the story that an artist or a director would like to tell. Do you think, because obviously seeing a thing in cinema, it's a different experience we've established, but also the feelings you get and the messages you take away from a film, regardless of if it's more art or entertainment, would be different than if you sat at home and watched it on a streaming service. Do you think that movies that are straight to stream, like we've mentioned before, might be structured differently than movies that we currently have just because of that platform?
Definitely. Like, you would spend infinitely less time working on sound design and stuff, right? That like wonderful experience when you're in a theater and like the stereo sound just surrounds you, like
it's a different audience you're playing to, right? I agree with Jacque in the sense you don't need it to be as big and bombastic, because in a sense, if it is like that, that's probably not a pleasant experience if you're streaming it. You know, it's just going to be too much. Whereas if it's in the cinema, it works.
But what about those people who have a home cinema setup?
Oh, I mean, that's also possible.
Yeah, some people's setups at home can be quite comparable to a modern theatre with 5.1 or even 7.1 surround sound.
But they're much more of a minority, right? They're definitely a niche in the market compared to people who just use Netflix.
Yeah, they'll be the hardcore cinephiles.
I mean, some people are dealing with, like 8K.
I mean, I don't think you can buy any films in 8K. I think 4K is the maximum.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can't even film in 8K. Because if you've got a 4K camera, I mean, you're good.
Well, film itself
is better.
If you do a high-res scan of the film, it can go up... Actually, I don't know if it goes up to 8K on a 35mm. 70mm would definitely go up to 8K.
70mm film is still the gold standard.
It does also really depend on the details of the actual chemicals used in the film too, because that affects like the grain size and everything.
To be honest, for a smaller budget film or something that was going to be used for an advert or for TV or even early concept shots and things on a larger film, you might just use a DSLR, which is your standard sort of film camera for amateurs and professionals alike.
If I've just thought of something else, if the cinema declines, do you think, because at home you have usually less of a setup than in a movie theater, do you think advances in sort of film technology will also decline?
Either that or it will spur on development of better home systems.
Yeah, I think there'll still be innovators in cinema who want to push the technology and the visuals and everything.
I suspect the technology in terms of the quality and the fidelity of what you're getting, though, is not really going to improve that much from here. I suspect we'll see innovations in different directions, just because of diminishing returns.
I mean, we're pretty close to the peak of quality. Like, every step up in quality is going to be less and less of a noticeable difference. But what I'm saying is, like, the difference in quality you can see by eye is going to be smaller and smaller. Like, the jump up from, like, VHS to DVD to Blu-ray to 4K, you can see that clearly with your eyes, assuming you're on a decent enough TV. If you're on a CRT monitor like Sammy, it's going to look all the same.
Well, it depends on the CRT.
I think, like family movies, if there were one genre of movies that's going to disappear from cinema, I feel like those will be the first to go.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
Why would you drag your screaming kids to the cinema? We could just stay at home.
No, you see, no, because I would argue that there's an advantage if you're a parent and you have like 3 kids or whatever, to getting out of the house and having them sit down in a cinema. Maybe they're more likely to shut up more. I mean, I'm really speaking from ignorance here.
Probably wrong.
Jesus Christ, that is so far from true. No.
I was thinking about the actual cost of going.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Staying at home and renting it will be much cheaper, because I think they sold Trolls World Tour for $20, so I don't know what that is in pounds. But for like a family of 4, that easily covers the cost of all their tickets, or less than the cost of all their tickets if they actually went to the cinema. And also, that's not even counting costs of food and stuff.
True.
So,
Yeah.
Popcorn and drinks and stuff are ludicrously expensive.
Well, that is where the cinema makes its money. It doesn't make it on the film.
Yes,
Well,
that's
we
true.
can see that.
I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like when I was younger, there was definitely a lot more signs up in the cinema that were like, no outside food or drink, and they would like, actually try and enforce it. But now, I don't see that as much anymore.
I always remember when I was younger, living in Edinburgh, when I was in my early teens, that we would always bring outside food in, but we'd have to sneak it in like coat pockets and things. You weren't allowed to bring it in. It was very much a tight smuggling ring we were running. For all of you in Edinburgh, you know, going to Ocean Terminal, cinemas on the top floor, you go to the Marks and Spencer's Simply Food, you grab a duck hoisin wrap, you shove it in your pocket, in you go, sorted.
That's a very weird cinema snack.
To be honest though, if I have the choice between the stuff they're going to give me in the cinema and just everything I can buy in a food shop,
I think you bringing duck hoisin wraps into a cinema is probably the reason they don't let people bring outside
I literally
food.
had a duck hoisin wrap the last time I went to the cinema. This is weird.
Other wraps are available.
I mean, to be fair though, do you remember back when we used to live in Asia? I mean, this wasn't an issue. Outside food and the whole cinema would be like, you know, £2. It was amazing.
Yeah.
An interesting question to ask, going back to cinema and about whether or not, you know, it's going to survive all this is, well, if they released your favourite film, if they did a re-release in the cinema right now, well, not right now, when things open up again, would you go and see it? And I think for me the answer is yes. I suspect for most people it is.
Yeah. Well, it depends. Well,
they released the original one, not the special edition.
The original cut of Star Wars. Hell yeah, I'd be first in line for that.
Yeah, man, those prequels were really good.
Yeah, we're talking about the Phantom Menace here.
Yeah, the Phantom Menace.
I've got the DVDs that the last release that they did of the original cuts of the original trilogy.
But the problem with those is that they're not restored at all.
No, they're not.
It's just a Laserdisc port. So
Laserdisc. Oh, someone's in high fidelity these days. Hello.
But that's the thing. Will people want to go back to the cinema after this is all over?
Yeah.
I think that's potentially an issue.
Because I was reading, they did a poll of consumers. I don't know who did the poll. Great research. But they said almost half of people said they would be reluctant or would never go back to cinemas after.
Really?
Is that in the UK?
In the US, it was.
Oh, that's really surprising.
Oh, right, hang on. Oh, wait, that sounds like more of a coronavirus issue than an industry issue.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Well, this is about
that's what we're talking
if
about.
Coronavirus will cause the death of the cinema, so it seems pretty relevant.
Also, if it changes people's habits significantly, it might. But I think it will only cause the death of the commercial cinema. I think art house cinemas will be fine because they have a small, highly dedicated audience anyway.
Yeah, there's always a market for that.
I think it depends. I think it depends on the time scale you're talking, right? I mean, like so today, right now, and to properly date the podcast, we're waiting in the UK for Boris Johnson to announce some plans or some ideas. If he says today that he's going to open the cinemas, I'm not going. But if we're talking 3 months down the line, then yeah, I probably would go if there was something I really wanted to see. Frankly, I don't go to the cinema much anyway. It's expensive, and I don't go out. But if they released Kung Fu Panda 4, I would be there. I mean, how long would it be before you guys wanted to return to the cinema?
I'd go back as soon as they're reopened.
It depends entirely on medical advice.
Yeah. Or, as soon as they're reopened and there's a film I want to see.
Yeah, that's
Whoa, Daniel. If Boris Johnson reopened the country tomorrow, would you go?
Is there anything on?
Is there a film that he wants to see tomorrow?
There's no films out at the moment, so no. Well, I know. I really heard the good things about Trolls World Tour.
That's true. It was one of the best selling on Amazon.
Do you think there's going to be like a big surge in pandemic related films after the pandemic?
Well, when I was looking up doing research for this, but just quickly, there's already a film called Corona.
Oh wow.
Guys, come on, you got to wait until after the crisis.
So, yeah, here we go. Corona, also known as Corona, Fear is the Virus, is an upcoming Canadian thriller drama about a group of people stuck in an elevator during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The whole thing!
What is this premise? What? Oh no, the Corona has taken out the power. We're stuck here forever.
I think it's actually what this movie is it's about a group of people trapped in a lift, and they've just gone, oh, connect it to the virus. Quickly, release it.
The film was written and directed by Mustafa Keshvari and made in part to address xenophobia and racism related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
I'm excited to see how he explores this from within an elevator.
Well, he is the Steven Spielberg of elevator-based films.
Okay, there's no release date or anything here, so it's probably going to come out months and months from now and be totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
Here's another question, maybe one to close out the conversation. Sure. If cinema does go the way of the dodo and is killed by the coronavirus, what would have been the last film you saw in the theatre?
Ooh.
For me, it would have been Parasite, which is a very good film, well worthy of its Oscar win in my opinion.
I can't remember if I watched Infinity War or Into the Spider-Verse as the last one.
Into Spider-Verse is a good one to go out on, yeah.
I think that might have been it, but it's been a long time since I watched any films.
Did you not see Endgame with us?
No.
No,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Weirdly, the last thing I saw in the cinema was Doctor Strangelove.
Huh.
Oh, nice.
Weird.
Going out with a classic.
Yeah.
In an art house cinema. Why do I keep bringing them up? It's because I am one of the denizens.
Which, in all likeliness, will probably survive.
Yeah.
I think the last film I went out and saw was Frozen 2, which is just a wonderful disappointment if it's the very last thing I see in a cinema, because
Oh dear.
it was a disappointment on itself.
Unlucky, Sammy.
Yeah.
What about you, Jacque?
I'm really not sure. It's either Endgame or one of those trash Star Wars films.
Oh, Episode 9. That can't be your last film.
Oh,
can
you
it?
don't want to go out on that one, no.
Oh no, the last one I watched would have been The Last Jedi. Oh no!
Last Jedi is much better.
Yeah, Last Jedi is a better one to go out on than Rise of Skywalker.
This question, in all its layers and intricacies, is what's your favourite easy meal?
Can I open up with a bit of a counter question? What do people define as easy? Because do you ever see a cooking show and they're like, oh yeah, no, you'll love this. It's super easy. It's just 20 minutes. You need these 500 ingredients and a degree in French cooking from the University of
But what would you guys think is easy?
Well, anything you can put in a slow cook is easy.
I love fantastic Italian dishes have about 3 ingredients, like cacio e pepe, which is just literally nothing. It's like cheese, pepper, pasta.
I would define easy not based on the number of ingredients, but based on the amount of physical time I have to spend doing it. So if it's just putting a bunch of stuff in a slow cooker, that's easy, even though it takes a long time. And if it's making a sandwich, that's easy because it's short. That's why I think for me, I'm gonna hit you with noodles because I think they just taste great and they're super easy to do.
Same.
Just on their own?
No. You throw in whatever sauce you have lying around, or
You fry vegetables and stuff alongside them,
Throw a couple of blueberries in.
Yeah, blueberries, blackberries, currants, grapes.
That is a good reference right there. That's a good reference.
Yeah, for the listeners at home, I once walked into the kitchen to find Sammy putting blueberries in his rice. To my great horror.
If we're talking about people combining weird different foodstuffs, I remember I used to live with a housemate who prepared a bowl of porridge for his breakfast, but then also put fish fingers in it and Marmite. And I've never seen anything so disgusting in my life.
Oh. Oh my god.
So Marmite is already the worst thing ever. But fish fingers as well, it's not even if you were going to add any sort of meat product to a porridge, fish?
Porridge with a chicken drumstick, that's normal.
I'm just saying, this isn't just A level of bad. This is A+ bad,
I would rather have blueberries in my rice.
Blueberry rice was a fantastic dessert dish.
He was the kind of man who didn't judge food by its taste. He judged it by its nutritional value.
Why doesn't he just, drink vegetable oil?
He probably does.
Well,
I don't live with him anymore. He probably does. He is a great guy, though. I just find his eating habits bizarre. If you're listening,
there is like a massive movement of like liquid meals, right? There's like Huel and
other protein powders are available.
I've never got the protein powder thing.
You know what I saw that I loved recently? I saw a thing called a PhD Smart Energy Bar. And I'm like, finally the bar for me.
I would love it if they went, please present your credentials.
Yeah.
That would be the worst business model of all time. Only allowing people with PhDs to purchase said energy bar.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit you with a controversial choice. What do you count as like as a meal?
No, you said noodles. You locked that one in. We're moving on.
No, because I'm just thinking like, okay, if I'm hungry and very lazy and already out in town, I will just buy a bunch of sweets and eat them.
No, that is not dinner.
That's not a meal. That involves no preparation. A fruit salad barely makes a meal, as far as I'm concerned. But, there's still preparation involved in that. You have to cut things up.
Well, there is fruit, right? There's like orange flavour, blue flavour, green flavour.
I would say, when I phrased the question, even though the question is only 3 words long, I was imagining dinner or lunch or one of the major meals. If you want to suggest something that's like more of a snack, I'm down for it, but I would argue that a fistful of sweets does not a meal make.
What about a meal deal then? Because that's something you don't prepare at all, you just buy it. But it is a meal, because in the name.
Yeah, but I don't think that counts. I assume he means meals we make from scratch.
Okay, so what if I make the sweets from scratch?
Yeah, but then I would...
That wouldn't be
probably
easy.
Not easy.
No, I just want to try and justify it, that's all.
But back to the question. Jacque, what would you say is your favourite easy?
I really like penne pasta, pesto, caramelized onions, half cherry tomatoes, and...
I'm sorry, this is already too hard.
Mozzarella and tuna. Fantastic.
I'm with you. Apart from the tomatoes and the tuna, we remove those two, and I'm down.
Yeah.
So I would argue that the meal you just described, Jacque, is too complicated. At least from my category of what I would count as an easy meal.
Interesting.
No, I would say that's easy. All you got to do is chop the onions and the tomatoes. Boil some pasta.
Throw in stir. I mean, like literally.
Yeah. So I'm not saying it's hard. I'm just saying that if it's on the scale of cooking,
that is not very high on the scale of cooking.
How much lower can you get? Like ramen and egg.
Ramen and egg. No, the egg is too far, Jacque. The egg is too far. Ramen only. You can only have half a pot boiling for it to qualify as easy.
A quick tip for people when they're boiling pasta: if you want to get the starch out and make sure it's all fine, just add a dash of oil to the water.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, no way.
But pasta, I mean, that's a bit complicated. It already has 3 ingredients, right? Water, salt, and pasta.
You're going to dread the level of complexity of mine then, Sammy.
Here's an issue I have, and this is just me going on a rant. But what is with British people not salting their rice? It just makes rice bad.
Okay, I'm Chinese and I've never salted rice.
Well, you're
What
wrong.
are you talking about, Sammy?
Sorry. You should let me cook you some rice. Because you are wrong.
No, because you had blueberries, so I'm not going to trust you.
That's why you're putting salt in it, because you have to cut the sweet flavour profiles you put in there.
Sammy, you can't be part of a rice master race and also put blueberries in rice.
No.
That just doesn't work.
You see what's happening here? You guys are at the peak of the Dunning-Kruger, right? You're like, oh yeah, I don't salt my rice, and I know that blueberries shouldn't be included, whereas I have transcended. I know.
Are you saying that the line between genius and madness is very narrow?
What I'm saying is, if none of you have tried blueberry rice or salted rice, you shouldn't critique it.
But people, can judge flavor profiles. Like you know what rice tastes like, you know what salt tastes like, you know what blueberries taste like. You can infer.
No. Blueberry rice doesn't have the salt. That's a sugar. That's a dessert rice. It's like a rice pudding.
It's a rice pudding, if you would.
It is! It's rice pudding! It's rice pudding with blueberries! It's not crazy!
Oh, it was rice pudding.
If you presented it as rice pudding with blueberries, that's different than I made some rice, I chucked some blueberries in it. It was nice.
Yeah, no.
Was it actually rice pudding though?
Well, it was boiled in milk and sugar, and it was rice with blueberries in it. You see, I knew when I would come onto this podcast, my views would be misrepresented.
Daniel, in my head, I was genuinely imagining basmati with just a smattering of blueberries across the top.
Same.
In fact, that's what the picture that he sent us also looked like.
Oh, wow.
I will point out, though, that I said British people don't salt rice and they're wrong, and then 4 British people told me, actually, I don't salt rice and I'm right. So... You're all 100% British.
I'm actually American.
I come from a long line of Chinese people, and for generations we have not put salt in. So
I hate those short genetic lines that some people have.
Okay, Holmes, what is your favourite easy meal then?
Sammy's not going to think this is easy, given what he didn't think was easy before. But it's a cold meal, so it's a sort of what I would call a Plowman's meal, as opposed to a Plowman's pie or a game pie or a Plowman's sandwich, where you just have a platter of meats, pies, vegetables, salad, onions, bread, and all of those things, and you sort of help yourself. You go, oh, I fancy a few cherry tomatoes. Oh, yeah, a couple of spring onions. Yeah, a few loose bits of salad. Yeah, I'll use. So
what you just said is you just clean out your fridge, chop all the things up, and put it on a plate.
You have some boiled eggs as well. No, I just really like it. It's a thing I used to do when I was in my teens in the evening. You get all of the bowls and the things for a cold meal out of the fridge, and you just sort of assemble whatever things you want from what I would describe as the Plowman's platter. Your crusty bread.
Oh, that's a good meal. That's a good name as well. Much better than IKEA dinner.
Fun fact, the Plowman's lunch is not in fact a traditional meal as you might think. It was invented in the 50s by cheese companies to sell more cheese.
Damn, that is a fun fact.
What condiments do we think are acceptable with cheese? Because I think Braxton pickle, really nice with cheese.
Yep.
I also think mango chutney, really nice with cheese.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have cheese with marmalade. That seems like a thing that's just wrong in my head.
Really?
Yes,
No.
yes.
I would never do
You are correct. Marmalade goes on rice like a normal person.
Do you know what, Sammy? I'm thinking... Sorry, your ridiculous suggestions. I'm thinking, actually, marmalade and rice might not be awful.
Boom.
It's something I wouldn't do.
I like how I say, look, you want to salt the water of the rice just a little bit to bring out the flavour. And you're like, that's ridiculous. And then I'm like, marmalade on rice. And you're like...
Actually, you said, it pisses me off that nobody in Britain salts their rice.
Yeah, and I was right. None of you do.
But that is not the same claim you've just made.
Who cares? We'll edit it. But seriously, I say we salt rice, and Holmes is like, no, that's ridiculous. I say add marmalade to rice, and Holmes is like, yeah, actually, that could work.
I didn't say it was ridiculous. I just said I didn't do it.
Yeah, but this was also when we thought you added blueberries to your rice.
You see, that's just an ad hominem attack.
I'm really struggling now. Oh, this is too funny. Oh, okay. Oh,
but so is there a significant difference from a Plowman's lunch and kind of just like leftovers?
Well, I think it's a difference. There's a difference between in terms of the meats. I think because you can also have game, like a game pie. Like there's a Plowman's pie as well.
My understanding of your interpretation of an easy meal, Holmes, is you get out a series of pies. And then you just eat as many pies as you want?
I didn't just
you're like, oh, when I want an easy meal, I call down to my manservant and ask him to bring up as many pies as they have in the larder.
Okay, I'll suggest something else.
Put the mills into effect, for we need more bread. I'm so glad I live in a palace where all the fountains can be on at once. What about you, Daniel? What's your favorite easy meal?
I don't know if I have one in particular, but I have quite a few that are just like chop up a bunch of ingredients, chuck it in a pan and cook it for like 20 minutes.
Mince and rice.
Like, maybe a bit more than just mince and rice.
Well, onions and stuff as well. Like, when I say that, I mean, all of the flavor as well.
So like a bolognese or a curry or something like that. Yeah, basically the minimum amount of effort on my part. Like, I don't want to do any complicated cooking techniques.
I mean, my most common meal is literally grilling some bacon or sausages on a George Foreman, and then also some naan bread, and then eating that. I mean, I'm not going to describe that as my favorite easy meal, because that's just so easy that I only do it because it's easy.
I wouldn't count that as an easy meal. Well, it is a meal.
Yeah,
it is easy.
Technically, but it's...
You're just cooking some bacon, cooking some naan bread.
And then having them together, yeah.
Like, I guess my favorite easy meal is a microwave curry or something.
Exactly.
Just pop it in the microwave, turn it on for 2 minutes, and it's done.
I mean, we're talking about really easy meals. Meals that somebody else has made for you are pretty easy.
Yeah.
That's what you were saying, Holmes, with your fucking 12 pies.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. You just I was talking about...
Look, it doesn't count if you pay the butler to make them, okay? That counts as me making them. Alright, Sid. I think it's time for you to round it off with your favorite easy meal.
Well, I just agreed with both you and Jacque that, either noodles or like an easy pasta is definitely the way to go. Either pasta, pesto, haven't done that in a while, but I feel like that can get kind of dry. So I understand why you add the tomatoes, but tomatoes are an inferior fruit and vegetable.
Inferior to what?
Everything.
Everything else. You only use them when preparing curries, and that's the only time they are allowed
Tomatoes should only be consumed when processed. Into like a curry sauce.
Yes.
What about cherry tomatoes? Little ones. There's a lovely little cherry tomato. You just pop it in raw and and it's a really satisfying burst of flavour in the mouth.
They're only nice when you have someone to feed them to you, Holmes. That's why you like them.
Yes. Do you know what? I've just realised I don't need to give people my address because, if they work out which area of London I live in, they can just look for the Palace. Oh, we haven't done the pub quiz questions this week.
Ah, that's true. Should we end off on those and also roll for next week's question?
Okay. Which actor was married to Elizabeth Taylor?
Richard Burton.
It was Richard Burton, exactly.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
An image of what Australian animal can be found on the tail of a Qantas aeroplane?
Kangaroo.
Correct, Amando.
So these are much easier than last time.
Don't worry, I'll find a hard one. Okay, how is wine described as chambre served? How is wine described as chambre served?
At room temperature.
Precisely, at room temperature.
Yeah,
Really?
chambre being like room.
Room.
So, yeah.
Smart.
Which 1952 film featured the song "Do Not Forsake Me"?
Ooh, I don't know.
Don't know.
It
Don't know the song.
It was High Noon. Okay, I think that's enough pub quiz questions.
I've got 2 questions here, but before that, stealing from other podcasts, I want to say how you can find us. You can find us on Anchor FM, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, lots of different places. Basically, I'm going to stick my neck out here and say it's pretty difficult to not find us if you search for it.
Oh yeah, no, we're the top.
Top podcast for Speaking From Ignorance, actually. Also, we now have a Twitter. The handle is @FromIgnorance. Use the hashtag Speaking From Ignorance, which is really long.
That's okay though. It'll mean they can't ask too long questions.
We've also got an email, obviously, but
speaking.ignorance@gmail.com.
yeah, if you want to email us questions. And 2 questions to close out on. Do you prefer outdoor or indoor activities more? And Brexit 2021 predictions. Sounds good. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yes, please tune in next week.
Till next time. Bye.